Hello everyone! In this week's video, I'm going to be destroying same face syndrome. If you don't know what same face syndrome is, it's a problem where artists tend to draw the same kind of face for all of their characters. Now, to be honest, I don't feel like I totally suffer from same face syndrome. Like, this character's face isn't the same as this character's. This character looks different from this character, and so on. However, I do feel like the face variety in my art is mostly with the eyes. I tend to draw the same kinds of noses, mouths, and kind of general face proportions. So I want to try to have some more variety in these areas. To help me with this, I'm going to be using the 100 Heads Challenge Pinterest board. For this challenge, artists will try to draw all 100 heads in their style, and that sounds like it takes a really long time, so I'll not be doing that. Instead, I'll be randomly picking heads from this board and then redrawing them. I want to get a good idea of how to draw the different faces, so I'll first draw the picture closely to the reference, then I'll draw the picture in my style, and then in my chibi elf style. That way, I also get an idea for how I want to stylize certain features. Anyways, enough talking, let's get into drawing. I'm going to use this random number generator to give me a number between 1 and 100. I got 47, so I go back to the board and count all the way down to number 47. And wow, we are starting with a doozy. It is a bust sculpture of an older gentleman with facial hair. This is definitely different and outside my comfort zone, but that's the whole point of this, so let's give it a shot. Like I mentioned, for the first drawing, I'm going to try drawing it more closely to the reference without trying to stylize it too much. Of course, I'm not going to make a perfect replica of the picture. My stylistic preferences will still come through a bit, and I will be keeping the drawing more sketchy. The point of these is to learn about the facial features and proportions, not to work on my realistic rendering skills. I do have to say, I started off very nervous, but I tried to just start drawing and feel out the different forms and shapes. For this drawing, the major forms of the face are the brow bone and nose, and also the beard. So far, I did not like how the face was looking, but I was hoping it would improve with the second sketch. Speaking of the second sketch, once I had the base sketch in place, I moved things around a bit to make it so it's easier for me to focus on the face, and started doing the cleanup sketch. For this face, I really wanted to capture the kind of heavy feeling of the brow area. It feels weighed down and it covers the upper portion of the eye a bit. This felt like a very important detail, so I tried my best to include it. It's been a good while since I tried to draw a face that's kind of more close to realism. I feel like it's been maybe like 5 years or so. I remember I drew a portrait of my mom for like her birthday, and I also tried to draw a portrait of my dad, and both were so time consuming and challenging that I just haven't really tried again since. But I was interested to see how the closer to reference drawings turned out for this video. I was hoping I'd be able to draw in a more realistic style more easily than before. Because this drawing is based on a sculpture, it was a bit hard to tell what some areas were doing, especially for the eyebrows, beard, and hair. I tried to just let myself be looser and not totally define these areas, since they're kind of not totally defined in the sculpture. Once I had the lines in place, I started adding shading with hatching. Like I said, I want to keep things looser and try to not go into too much detail with the rendering, and I felt like shading with hatching would help me do that. If you don't know what hatching is, it's basically just drawing a bunch of lines kind of going the same direction, and this kind of gives a feeling of tone or shading. I often will draw the lines going in a way that kind of helps define the flow of the form if I can. I try to not draw the lines in a direction that conflicts with the form. This was probably my favorite part. It was really nice seeing the forms come together. So now that this version is feeling done, let's try to draw the picture more in my style now. I made a copy of the sketch with a low opacity and used the liquify tool to move the proportions around a bit to help them be more similar to my style. And to help keep the drawings kind of similar, I will draw over this first drawing. For this version, I still wanted to capture the prominent shape of the brow and nose. This time around, I am making the shapes a bit cleaner and sharper. I'm also allowing myself to define details more, like with the eyes and eyebrows. Of course, the eyes are also larger, but I am still drawing them smaller than usual to fit with the older look of this character. For some reason, I did find this process of drawing this man in my style a bit funny. The change from more realistic to very manga-like amuses me for some reason. I think it's because in the more manga style, he looks kind of handsome all of a sudden, and I find that funny. So this was really interesting to do. I don't draw older characters super often. I also don't draw beards very often for the shapes of the beard. I'm also letting myself define things a bit more, and I'm kind of using more solid separation between what is the face and what is the beard. I also define the parts of the beard a bit more, like I separate the mustache area a bit. I knew the trickiest area was going to be around the lower lip, but I tried my best to make it make sense and not seem too off. I should probably study facial hair more. This is a bit off topic, but my sister and I went to go see the new Haikyuu movie in theaters, so that was really fun. I had been waiting for the movie to be added to like Crunchyroll or something, but then I saw people on Twitter talking about it being in theaters, and I was like, wait, what? It's in theaters? So I texted my sister being like, we have to go see this, and she was like, yes, we do. I really enjoyed the movie. It's been so long since I saw the Haikyuu characters in animated form, so it was great seeing them again, and watching on the big screen was really cool. It was a little hard to read subtitles at times because like they were so large on the screen, and I'm used to like watching on my phone. But yeah, I really enjoyed myself and I was smiling like the whole time. Oh, and as you can see for this drawing, I'm going with a more cel-shaded look to fit my style. Also, to help push the forms a bit, I added some highlights as well. Now we have the realistic styled one and the one in my style. Now I'm going to draw a third one in my chibi elf style. Once again, to help things stay similar, I'll draw over the previous drawing. This time I'm drawing over the one I drew in my style since this one's closer to the chibi elf style. The reason why I'm including my chibi elf style in this video is because I want to try to have more diverse faces with this style as well, especially since I plan to use this style for a future project. The faces overall are simpler, but I want to still try to have different kinds of facial structures. And I want to try to find ways to stylize more complex faces into this more simple form. I do feel like I could have pushed the chibi elfness a bit more with this one. I don't know if he totally goes with the style, but it's the step in the right direction, I feel like. We are kind of speeding through this one since I don't feel like I have a lot to say about it, and it is a bit more simple. Overall, I'm just kind of simplifying details, making some details kind of larger or more noticeable, and the overall line work is kind of cleaner. So here is this picture in 3 different styles. I was very scared starting with this one since it is very different from the characters I usually draw, but I definitely learned a lot from it, and it turned out better than I was anticipating, so that's good. For this next one, instead of randomly picking, I let myself pick. I worked on the second one on the same day I drew the first one, so I felt like I wanted something a bit more in my comfort zone. I chose this picture because it is in my comfort zone a little bit more. It's a simple front view and it's a younger character, but there are different features I want to capture, like the shape of her eyes and the narrowness of her mouth. Something I noticed as I was drawing this more realistic version is that I have taken in a lot of general knowledge about faces and their proportions over the years, so I didn't feel as lost when trying to draw more realistically compared to a handful of years ago. It does feel a bit different from usual, and I know my drawing is not like a perfect replica of the picture, but I am pleased with the result, and I feel like I can say the result does look a decent amount like the original. I kind of didn't realize I had taken in these rules of general proportions over the years. However, I think it's because of these rules, so to speak, that I draw certain features pretty much the same between characters. For example, in front view, I often draw the mouth wide enough that the edges line up with the inner parts of the iris. This is similar to the measurement for real faces, but the mouth does end up being smaller in my style since the eyes are larger. I often stick with this measurement because it is quote-unquote correct. However, people can have their mouths be different widths. Like this girl's mouth aligns pretty much with her tear ducts. So I need to keep in mind that different mouth widths is a character design option and not get too stuck on correct proportions. It almost feels silly because when I say it, it's like, no duh, people can have different size mouths. But I feel like it's a detail I never really consider, except for maybe giving like a creepy character a very wide mouth, since for some reason wider mouths or smiles help kind of push the creepy feeling. But that's often the only time I really consider it, but I need to try to consider it more often. Anyways, back to the drawing. I was trying really hard to not break out the symmetrical ruler, but I ended up using it because I was getting tired and lazy. I tried to not fully use it. I would turn it off for some parts to help things feel a bit less symmetrical, since faces technically aren't perfectly symmetrical. But yeah. It's kind of funny because I'll get comments saying things like, I want to see you draw a front viewing face without a symmetrical ruler, almost talking as if I can't draw one without the ruler, but like, I can. I do it all the time with my traditional art. I'm just lazy and hate taking the time to get both parts nearly identical when there is a very simple option to make them look the same. And a lot of times if I do want something to not look perfectly symmetrical, I'll sketch it with the symmetrical ruler on, but then I'll do the line art without the symmetrical ruler on. I'll do this if I have time and if I really don't want it to look symmetrical, but sometimes I just don't really care. Also, for this face, I decided to not use cross-hatching for the shading. I opted to mostly use the airbrush, since a lot of the shadows on the face are very soft and subtle. They aren't super harsh and have hard edges like with the last drawing. This is mostly because the forms of the face are all very soft and smooth, and they don't have a lot of edges to them, so this results in the shading all being very soft. So here's the more true to photo version. Next I'm going to try to stylize it in my style. I feel like this will be a good one to try to stylize since the character's age will allow me to use my more usual proportions. To capture the look of a monolid, I'm going to extend the top eyelash line further down than I usually would. I will also not draw any lines for the eyelid area, but I will add some shading to this area to help indicate its form. These are very small details, but I feel like it makes the eye shape come across. I feel like if I hadn't done this study, I would have drawn the eyes in my kind of general sharper eye shape. So I feel like I've learned some things from this, so that's good. I do wish I had the Clip Studio Paint footage for these drawings, so they were a bit easier to kind of speed through, but sadly they did not get captured for some reason. I have Clip Studio Paint set to automatically record the process for new canvases, but I learned that if I make a new canvas by copying and pasting from my clipboard, that this does not turn on the recording feature. I had copy and pasted the texture from my first canvas to make this canvas. I now know that if I do that, I need to turn on the capture feature myself. Also, I'm sorry if I sound kind of tired in this video. I didn't get much sleep last night or yesterday or kind of the day before that. I've been having a hard time sleeping and I'm really tired today. So I'm sorry if I sound kind of out of energy, but I'm trying to still sound normal. The nose and mouth are very similar to the first ones I drew. The overall forms are kind of just more simple and less rendered. The earrings are also the same, but for the neck I make it a bit narrower and longer since it's just how I stylize that area. For the hair, I draw it in a similar way. It's just less detailed and I make the smaller details kind of larger and more noticeable, like the texture of the hairline and the hair part. It is interesting doing these side-by-side comparisons. It kind of makes me notice the small things that I do stylize for my style that I usually don't notice. It's very interesting. I recommend giving it a try. I add the finishing touches and now this one is done. But we have one more, the chibi elf style. I hope it's not too boring watching me redraw the same thing 3 times. They are in different styles, so I hope you are having fun seeing the differences between them like I am. For this one, I wasn't sure how I wanted to stylize the nose. For my chibi elf style, I often draw a line for the nose or no nose. But I feel like neither of these worked for this character. I wasn't able to come to a decision at the moment, so I decided to come back to this area once everything else was in place. It's always nice doing this style last since it's the quickest, and by the time I get to it, I'm starting to feel like I want to be done. When I would move on to the third drawing, I'd be like, I have to draw another one, but then I would remind myself that it shouldn't take too long. Also, I love this drawing. For some reason, I think it's just so cute, and I really like how it turned out. I especially love the lips. I never really give my chibi elf characters lips, but it's something I will definitely have to do for some of them. I feel like they look really cute. Oh, and for the nose, I decided on a kind of rounded line that has a bit of shading and little lines above it to help it feel more round, but also not too harsh. I feel like it gets the feeling that I want across. So here are all 3 drawings. I'm really happy with what I learned with these and with how they turned out. We are going to be doing one more picture, and this time I let the random number generator pick again. This time I pressed the button a few times for no real reason. I was kind of waking up when I was filming this and wasn't totally awake, so I kind of just kept pressing the button. But we got 24, so I count down until I get to that number, and number 24 is this guy. I did find his jawline to be interesting. I also want to try to capture his boxier nose shape. Also, I hope I don't sound rude when I say things like boxier nose shape. I'm not trying to be rude, and I'm not saying any of this with harmful intent. I'm just trying to describe the features and how I perceive them and their shape. This time the brow bone is very prominent. His eyelids are also more hooded, so we don't see them very much. This time I'm letting myself be pretty sketchy, and I'm kind of just cleaning things up as I go. I didn't even do a cleanup sketch for this one, as I didn't really feel like it was needed. The last drawing had a more narrow mouth, whereas this one has a wider mouth with the edges nearly lining up with the pupils. For the jawline, I add some hatching coming from the edges of the face, and it heads down towards the mouth and almost meets up with it. If I do another video like this one, I want to do drawings like I did for this video, but I also want to try drawing the same features in different views. Like, I know how I would draw this kind of face in front view now, but if I wanted to draw this kind of face in profile view, I'm not totally sure if I would know how to go about doing it. So I think this is something I'll try to tackle in a future video. It would be nice if I could find a reference that had the same person in different views. That way I could get an idea of what the features are like from different angles. If you know of anything like this, please let me know. Also, thank you so much to those of you who left helpful comments on this video. The advice on Blender helped me so much and really helped fix some of the problems I was having. So thank you so very much, you're all awesome. And I definitely want to do another Blender video again. Now that this drawing is done, we'll redraw it in my style. Something I was noticing while doing these, but especially for this drawing, is that it can be a bit hard to express different nose shapes with how simplistic I often draw my noses, especially in front view. In 3/4 view and side view, I do get to draw the nose more, but in front view it's often more minimal. So I was having a hard time expressing the nose shape in my style. To kind of get the point across, I made the line for the bridge of the nose more to the side instead of close to the center. I will also make the shading for the nose be a more boxy shape instead of a more triangular shape like I usually do. I will also add a little line coming off the right nostril to help indicate the shape of the tip of the nose a bit. So yeah, I'm trying to indicate these features while also trying to stick true to my stylistic choices to the best of my abilities. I don't want features to stray too outside of my style or feel inconsistent. Like, I don't want one character to just get a dot for a nose, but then another character gets a fully drawn and rendered nose. It would just feel kind of odd. It was really nice focusing on faces. I feel like it's been a long time since I've done face studies. I think it's because I feel like I draw faces all the time, so I don't feel like it's something I should be needing to do studies on. In fact, I often feel a bit guilty when I just draw headshots because I feel like I need to be practicing other things. So I'll be more focused on studying poses, perspective, backgrounds, and things like that. But this was a really nice change of pace, and I definitely want to do it again. I feel like it'll help me create characters with more unique facial features. Also, for some reason, the chibi elf version of this makes me laugh. I don't know, he just really seems like a Chad or something. I do feel like I drew the features and stylized them in the right way, but for some reason, the personality of the drawing just feels kind of different, and I'm not totally sure why. I think it's maybe that the facial expression really comes through in the chibi elf style, so that might be why. But here are all the drawings I did for this video. Like I said, I really want to do this again, and I want to try to draw different features and different views, and maybe I'll try that in a future video. If that is something you want to see, please let me know down in the comments. Before we end, I want to say a super big thank you to my wonderful YouTube members and Patreon patrons for their support. It means so much to me. And thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next week in my next video. Bye!